And now for something completely different.
The Bitchspot Report. Welcome to the Bitchspot Report, the podcast with news and views from a distinctly conservative atheist perspective, with your hosts, Cephas and Out West. We hope we can entertain, educate, and perhaps even enrage you. Now let's begin this episode of the Bitchspot Report. Hi there, this is Cephas reporting from the future. I just wanted to let everybody know that we're doing a little bit of a short show this week. Unfortunately, my co-host Out West has been fighting with a cold for a couple of weeks, and halfway through the show, he ended up getting very, very ill and was unable to continue. Myself and Hausdorff, we struggled through as best we could, but unfortunately, as I said, we did decide to make it a little bit shorter show than normal, so we're only going an hour instead of an hour and a half. I hope that's okay with everybody. And now, on with the show. Welcome once again to another wonderful, fun, and fact-filled episode of the Bitchspot Report, the podcast where conservatism and atheism collide. I'm your host, Cephas, and with me as always is...
Out West, and thank you for joining us today. And we have a really great guest today, and you're going to be surprised that we have a guest, because we've never had a guest before, and our guest is...
Hausdorff AD. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get on with the show.
Well, thank you, Cephas and Out West, for having me on the show. I've been excited for the last couple of days. Like I said, my name's Hausdorff. I have my main thing is Hausdorff's Bible blog. I read one chapter of the Bible every day and do some summary and commentary. And I read some Christian commentary and, well, generally make fun of it, although sometimes they have some interesting things to say. And I have a podcast that goes along with it.
And what's your podcast? Please tell us so we can add that to our link here.
Oh, sure. It's Hausdorff Reads the Bible.
Yeah,
Okay.
Actually, I've already got links to your podcast and to your blog. So
Okay,
Awesome.
well, I just wanted to make sure everybody knew.
yes, absolutely. All right, well, let's get going. If you were listening last week, I suggested a new segment about something that pissed us off this week. Our news segment's usually about semi-mainstream news stories. This can come from anywhere from blogs, Twitter, real-life discussions, just about anything that just grinds your gears during the week. It's not something that's going to be a regular segment, but it's going to be one that comes up every now and then when somebody has something to complain about. And Out West, you said you had something that was really pissing you off this week, so why don't you go ahead and take this?
I don't know, because I'm so pissed off, you go first.
Me?
I'm sorry, yeah, you go first. I'm
All
so
right.
pissed off, you go first, because I'm going to yell and scream.
Okay, well, no problem. I can do that. My complaint this week isn't anything really new. In fact, I've written blog posts about it before, but it popped up again this week. The situation was on Twitter, and in a nutshell, I was having a discussion with somebody on illegal immigration, and the subject of drugs popped up. And almost immediately, we were overwhelmed with people just jumping into the discussion, demanding drug legalization. When I said something about not supporting it, they immediately tried to vilify me, saying that there must be some law I don't obey or something I do wrong. Therefore, they're justified in doing whatever the hell they want. I absolutely hate that. So what do you guys think about that?
I think it's whatever your belief is in about the war on drugs. And come on, let's all agree. There is no fucking war on drugs. Okay, we send money to Mexico and Colombia and Venezuela and Bolivia and wherever, Costa Rica, and we spent $1 trillion over 30 years on the war on drugs, and nothing has been done about it. You know, so let's get real about it. If we're going to do a war on drugs with the United States, let's put troops on the border. I know, and I'm not in favor of that. Let me tell you that, by the way. I'm not in favor of that because I live, and you know this, Cephas, I live right by the border.
Oh, yeah.
If we're going to do a real war on drugs, let's put 100,000 troops from Texas to California on the border and stop it.
My point wasn't even really that. It was that they think that they can do something illegal or whatever. And then, so long as they can find something, if they can go, oh no, you jaywalked across the street once, therefore I'm justified in shooting people.
Well, yeah,
that
kind of
thing
the ridiculous
pisses me
thing.
off.
I would, I wish they would legalize drugs, but that's sort of not the point here. The point is that those guys' argument is really, really stupid.
Oh, it's extremely stupid. But they keep doing it. It happens all the time. What the hell is with these people?
Nothing drives me more crazy than when someone who I agree with has the stupidest argument. And I'm like, no.
Oh, it happens all the time, trust me.
I know. It's awful.
Yeah, it is. I wish, if you have a justification for what you're doing, use it. Don't say, well, you're not any better than I am, therefore I can do anything I want. No, you can't. That's not the way logic works. Sorry.
It's awful.
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't work that way. But you also have to look at it in a humanistic way, is that people are going to do what they want to do. Human beings are, fallible, as we all know. The war on drugs thing, to me, is a stupid waste of money where we could put that into, housing people that need homes, like street people, putting them into homes and helping them to get off their drug problems. I'm not saying it's our responsibility to do that, because everybody makes their own decisions about what they're going to do, but at least helping people. And when you spend $1 trillion, and it is $1 trillion over 30 years to fight the war on drugs, that's a shame to me. That's a shame to me.
That's basically the reason that I think they should legalize it, just because it's a waste of money the way it is.
Well, I'm not necessarily, and I'm very much a libertarian, by the way, but I am not so much, I have my back and forth on legalizing it. I'm not sure we should do this, and I need a lot more evidence to show that it would be a good thing to legalize it, and I haven't seen the evidence. And again, and Cephas knows, I lean towards libertarian, that, yeah, I really need to know more. I really need to have more information about this before I make my mind up. He's made his mind up. I know. You've heard him talk about this.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And he is absolutely against it. For me, give me more information.
Well, give me a good reason why it should be done, other than, well, you can't stop anybody, so you might as well just legalize it. That's not a good reason. A good reason is why it's a good thing to have it done, not why it's a waste of time not to do it.
I agree with you. That's a bad reason. That you can't stop it, so let's just legalize it.
Yeah.
I agree. That's a bad reason. But I'm waiting for a decent reason to hear from somebody, from my libertarian friends, and I cannot hear one.
They don't have any good reasons either.
No, nobody does. Nobody does. The liberals don't have a good reason.
Nobody has a good reason. But they're saying, hey, you're spending all this money, and granted, I will agree, we're spending it very, very, very badly. We're spending a lot of money on stopping people from murdering each other. Just because we can't stop them from killing each other, does that mean we should just go, whoops, let's legalize it? No, that's stupid.
I think it's, it's a matter of what harm is being done, and of course you would agree, or you would say that there's plenty of harm being done. I think at least with pot, there's, having people smoke it isn't as big of a deal as the money spent trying to stop it.
Oh, sure. But if you're going to limit it to just one thing, okay, I might even accept that argument. But let's face it, a lot of libertarians are out there going, legalize everything. If you can shove it in your body, legalize it. And I don't agree with that, and I don't think any rational.
And by the way, both of you, I'm a libertarian, and I actually agree with Cephas on this, because I don't agree with it. If you can shove it in your body, it's okay. But I actually do believe, I really don't believe that marijuana is a gateway drug. There have been no studies. And you know what? I've looked it up over time, over years and years and years. I've never seen one study that says that marijuana is a gateway drug to heroin or cocaine or anything else.
It's obviously not. But you can't take like the most harmless, innocuous drug you can come up with and say, therefore, we should legalize everything. And that gets done a lot too.
That's true.
As you know, small L libertarian, I'm not saying that. I'm saying, let's like look at it. Let's look at it. I mean, think about it. How many resources do we spend? I mean, I live 25 miles from the Mexican border, and there are people arrested constantly for, marijuana, hundreds of pounds of marijuana, trying to bring it across. Okay, fine. Can we get rid of that? Can we quit putting people in prison for marijuana?
And that seems just silly.
Yeah, why put somebody in prison for smoking it? I mean, seriously, I'd rather take the people who are dealing it, the people who are smuggling it in, and deal with them.
Sure.
But not the people, okay,
well, no,
you're smoking, who cares?
About the people that are bringing it in. Why don't we, 40 years ago, that's how old I am, there was there was an article in a magazine I read. I think it was Newsweek. I'm talking 40, nearly, over 30 years ago, because I'm not that old, where Newsweek, it was a Newsweek article where the tobacco companies were absolutely ready to manufacture marijuana cigarettes.
Of course they are.
If the government would allow them to do that, they were absolutely ready. And of course they would be sold just like alcohol would be in a liquor store.
Yeah.
So what is the problem with that?
Well, I've got no problem with that, but like I said, a lot of people are using, even though marijuana isn't a gateway drug, a lot of people are using it as a gateway to universal legalization of everything.
It's a gateway.
And I think that's wrong.
Yeah, that's wrong.
I actually think that's wrong because it's the libertarian value is what you do to yourself is your business.
And that's cool.
And no, it's not cool. That's the Ayn Rand.
Well, no, it's fine if you want to do something to yourself, if you want to stick something in your arm and whatever, as long as you take complete and total and utter responsibility for it. That means don't come back to the taxpayers and expect them to pay your medical bills. Don't come to us when you can't get a job because you can't stand up.
The problem is that's not the way it works.
Well, of course not.
And,
all right.
And that's where my problem is with that.
That's one of my
And as you know, I am a small L. I've said this, I think already 3 times now. Libertarian is that's where my problem comes in with that. Because if you decide to become a heroin addict, that's your problem. Why am I paying taxes to give you SSI to keep you, and in many states, in fact, in all 50 states, as far as I know, heroin addicts, drug addicts get SSI. That's part of Social Security.
Yep.
Although I hate the idea that we spend the money to put them in jail. That sucks too.
Why is Social Security in the trash can going down? Because they're giving payments of $700-800 a month to drug addicts.
Which is stupid, but it's as stupid as putting them in jail. If what these people need is treatment, they don't need jail.
Right.
All right. Well, anyway, let's get off to the other thing that's pissing you off, so we can get on with the show.
Okay. The thing that really pissed me off, really pissed me off, was a blog post I read about, I think it was from Ophelia. I should say.
Call her Ophi. Shit pisses her off.
Okay, Ophi Benson. About how somebody, was redeemed. And the redeemed person was Harriet Hall. Now, Harriet Hall is a much-loved person in the skeptic community. she's a couple of years older than me. She's a pilot in the Air Force.
That's not really what she's known for, but...
Yeah, she's not known for that. But she was in the Air Force. She's a retired Air Force, by the way. I think a colonel, by the way. That's what she retired as. And, and she wrote some posts about, because last year at TAM, she wore a shirt that said, "I feel safe at TAM."
What?
Yeah,
you can't have that. Come on.
Yeah.
No.
I feel safe at TAM.
Yeah.
Because several of the skeptics, Becky Watson and others, wrote posts about, oh my God. Amy Roth Davis wrote a post about, oh my God, I had to leave TAM a day early because it offended me so much. Because on the back of her shirt, she said, "I am not a skeptic." And that was in lowercase letters, by the way.
Yeah, well, the reality is, she's right. She's not a skeptic. She
But
doesn't write for the skeptic.
Wait. That's an old term. Okay, I'm an old guy. You know me. I'm an old guy. From the 70s, maybe early 80s thing. She said other things on her T-shirt. And then the skeptics from skeptic.org took offense. Because they thought she was talking about her. But actually she wasn't, because what she was talking about was from, this woman, she's a few years older than me, from the 60s and 70s. And what she was trying to say is, I'm a woman. I'm a skeptic. Don't, categorize me. And the whole response to that, Cephas, really pissed me off. It did. Because she got called a mangina, she got called a misandrist,
Yeah, but that's all old news. That's not the new story.
Okay.
The new story is that she finally went to Surly Amy and a couple of other people and said, I'm sorry if that offended you. She didn't say she was sorry she did it. She said, I'm sorry if you took offense to what I did. And now all of a sudden, Ophelia and Richard Carrier and some of the others are coming out going, oh, look, she's finally come around to our way of thinking. No, she hasn't.
And that's my thing is like Richard Carrier said, Ophelia, she said, Harriet Hall is redeemed.
She had nothing she needed redeeming from. Sorry.
Yeah. Hausdorff, how do you feel about that?
Well, I actually don't know most of those people, so I kind of got lost there.
See, you're lucky. You've stayed out of this whole mess.
Anytime this kind of drama comes up, I just stop paying attention.
Yeah.
Well, we read these things all the time, and not to have any blog posts or any podcasts about it, but it's interesting to see that someone can say, "Hey, look, I didn't mean you," and then the other person can come back and go, "You're a piece of shit." That's basically what Amy Roth did.
Oh, she's a pain in the ass. They all are. I don't pay any attention to any of it. I don't read any of their blogs. I haven't read anything Ophelia's written. I think Richard Carrier, while I respect him as a historian, I think he's a dick. But, I do find occasionally other blogs that will write something on this, and then I'll go look and immediately regret that I ever bothered, because it's so laughable. These people act like 4-year-olds.
Right.
Well, they do, and they do. They act like well, yeah, you're right, 4-year-olds. I don't understand it. Why can't we have a rational discussion?
Because if these people were rational, Atheism Plus never would have existed, and none of this crap would ever have come up. The whole point is they're all just a bunch of emotional basket cases, and that's why these movements come up, because these people don't think rationally. That's my take.
So Hausdorff, how do you feel about that?
When I first heard about Atheism Plus, I thought it sounded like a good idea. It exploded. I almost immediately just stopped paying attention.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good idea.
Why did you stop paying attention?
Well, I mean, so I thought it seemed like a good idea because it's like, you know, I like atheism, I like equality, yay. And then it was like everything that was about it was all like people, it was just like ridiculous infighting, and like people were constantly arguing and not making any interesting conversation. And I was just like, this clearly is a distraction. I haven't read anything about it.
It was all about words.
Well, it's actually all about spin. See, originally Harriet Hall went to TAM wearing that shirt to show everybody that she wasn't afraid of being attacked or raped or whatever the hell the skeptics were saying was going to happen. But Surly Amy took one look at that shirt, especially the quote-unquote skeptics, and freaked out completely irrationally. And all of a sudden, she's off running home to Mama because she can't handle the fact that, oh my God, somebody's making fun of the skeptics. Well, the fact is, Harriet Hall was absolutely right. She's not a skeptic. The skeptics, by definition in this scenario, are people who post on skeptic.org. Harriet Hall doesn't do that. So therefore, she's right. And Surly Amy had absolutely no reason whatsoever to react the way that she did. She acted like a 2-year-old. That's the problem, is that all these people are acting like 2-year-olds. And then as soon as Harriet Hall decides, well, she's going to try to break the ice and she's going to try to make things right, you certainly didn't see Surly Amy, you certainly didn't see Ophelia, you certainly didn't see Richard Carrier, P.Z. Myers, any of these people. You didn't see them coming across apologizing. They shut their damn mouths for a whole year and didn't say a word. And when she decides she's going to go over and she's going to try to make things right, the first thing all these people do is turn around and say, well, see, we were right all along. Fuck her and fuck all the rest of you. And that's Atheism Plus in a nutshell. And now
for the news.
The Italian newspaper Panorama has reported that the Vatican, as part of its investigation into the VatiLeaks scandal, has been secretly bugging its own people, intercepting their email and recording their phone calls in an attempt to ferret out anyone who might have helped the papal butler release secret Vatican documents. The Vatican claims that it's limited in scope, but that's like saying the pedophile sex scandal is limited in scope. Just what is it that they're looking for, and what do we think they're going to find? Ideas?
What are they going to find? I mean, I imagine that they're trying to separate the people who are guilty of doing horrible things from the people who are guilty of trying to let those horrible things get out to the world.
Yeah, but isn't that most...
No. I disagree. I think they're going to hide it. They're going to hide it.
Right. They're trying to find the people that are letting it out and punish them.
Oh, of course. I mean, if they have nothing to hide, why do they care if their internal documents get out into the public?
Exactly.
All right, we've been seeing this in the last couple of weeks that we've been talking about the Pope resigning. There's an awful lot of paranoia in the Catholic Church right now. We've already talked about the Pope having a couple of big, heavy, red-bound books that warn the next Pope of all the crap going on. How many other people are going to try to release this information to the public?
Let's think about this. Cardinal Mahoney, you wrote this post just the other day about Cardinal Mahoney in Los Angeles. The most useless piece of shit. And I don't really curse on this podcast, but this guy is like the most useless piece of shit ever. He's going to vote on the next Pope. Why is that? How could they do that?
Because he's no better than the majority of them. Most of them are all a bunch of pedophile hiders.
Right.
So what does the Catholic Church do? And when I say the Catholic Church, I mean the members, the people.
Oh, you mean like the ground level troops?
Yeah, the ground level troops.
I don't understand why anybody still follows them. Quite honestly, I mean, they could, so they grew up Catholic, they want to still be Catholic, but why would they give money to this organization? It boggles my mind.
Because they've been deluded by the Catholic Church to think that if they don't keep giving them money and keep supporting them and keep following them, they're all going to hell.
Right.
That's your answer right there. Because these people are delusional. There you go.
But how does that happen? How does that happen in the 21st century?
2,000 years of mind control, I guess.
In the 21st century, though.
Well, it's starting to go.
Because as we know, 20% of the American people have said, I'm none. 20% of 315 million people. Now, that's not saying they're atheists or agnostic or anything else. They're just saying none.
Works
when
for
they
me.
vote.
Yeah. I'm good with that, and it's increasing all the time.
Yeah.
People are starting to walk away from religion. I'm just looking at this religion specifically and saying, why is anybody buying into this religion when it has this many public scandals out there all the time?
I can't even keep them straight.
Yeah. It's like, who's screwing kids now?
Other than all of them.
Well, not all of them.
That's not fair. It's not all of them.
It's a certain small percentage.
Well, it is. Think about this. I mean, I lived in Colorado Springs for 15 years, and there's this guy, what was his name? Ted, whatever, who had this church of like 15, 20,000 members. I mean, it was a fucking stadium. And it turned out he was a homosexual.
Ted Haggard?
Thank you, Ted Haggard. Turned out he was a homosexual.
Oh, he spent years saying, "Oh no, homosexuality is horrible." But
yeah,
I am one.
Yeah, he spent years and years and years building up his church of 20,000 people in my hometown at the time. A couple years after I left. Oh wow, man, he's a I don't know what you call it.
Well, an idiot, but he's an out.
Yeah, well, I don't want to offend any.
Any what? Idiots? He's an idiot.
No, I don't want to offend any of our homosexual listeners.
I don't think they care. Really, I don't think.
But yeah, he's a homosexual.
Yeah, but my point is, as soon as he came out that way, as soon as it came out that he was just a hypocrite, most of his parishioners ran away. They left. They didn't keep supporting him. Why in the world are the Catholics still out there giving money to this organization that has lost billions of dollars?
Whoa! You're wrong, Cephas. Because that church that he founded, he put together, had 12,000 members.
Okay, great. Half of them left.
No, they didn't. No, they didn't. The church he founded is, well, maybe not as big, but it's close to over 10,000 members today.
Is he a part of it?
No, he's not.
Then what difference does it make? It's not his church anymore.
But that was his church.
It was. It's not now.
Well,
so they're not following Ted Haggard around. They're following somebody else.
The difference is the church didn't dissolve into nothing.
But they kicked him to the curb?
Yeah, he's gone.
Yes, they did kick him to the curb.
So it's no longer his church. It's somebody else's church. They're just following somebody else.
And what's interesting about this, Hausdorff, is that, yeah, what Cephas just said, they kicked him to the curb. And they brought in somebody else and say, oh, Jesus is Lord.
But I'm willing to bet that whoever they brought in to replace Ted Haggard, and frankly, I don't remember who the hell it was, but I'm willing to bet they came in and they had the same damn position he did before he came out. They're certainly not going to change their philosophy and say, hey, now that Ted Haggard's out, homosexuality's okay. No, they kicked his ass to the curb, and now it's the same old message.
And their 12 100,000 stadium that they have in Colorado Springs. They fill it up every week. They say, Jesus
Crazy.
Lord.
Yeah, but they're not following Ted Haggard. That's the point. They're following somebody different. It's not like the Catholics said, well, screw it. We're going to just throw out the Vatican and have a different church. They didn't do that. They're following the same damn people that were doing the same damn thing the whole time.
So what do you get? So Cephas, what do you think's going to happen? And I have to ask this with Hausdorff as well.
I think that over time, they're already hemorrhaging members as it is.
No. Wait. Let me ask the question first.
Just did.
The Catholic Church, they're hemorrhaging members. You're right. You're correct in that. Hausdorff, I want to ask you first.
Well, ultimately,
Who do you think is the most electable pope?
oh, I have no idea.
None
But,
of them.
I'm sure what they're going to do is they're going to lose a bunch of members, they'll reinvent themselves, and then they'll come back strong, unfortunately. I mean, I'd like to think that they would disappear, but I think that's unlikely. I hope I'm wrong, but they'll probably just, change things just enough and come right on back.
Do you think, do you predict even maybe it's going to be, let's say, because the Catholics have taken a lot of shit over Africa, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's maybe an African cardinal that gets elected?
I
Think
suppose
about
why not?
Think about Rwanda back in the 90s, the early 90s. I mean, I was there. I mean, that was a shithole. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people were killed. Do you think they might nominate an African cardinal?
Extremely unlikely.
Why do you say that? Why do you say that, Cephas?
I don't think that they're that far along that they could do that kind of thing. I don't see the Catholic Church being
fucking Nazi. They fucking had
the Catholic Church supported the Nazis. The
Yeah,
Catholic Church
yeah,
are
and-
Nazis.
Yeah, and they had a Nazi with Ratzinger. They had a Nazi pope for 8 years. So
I don't buy that they're going to elect anybody but hyper-conservative, white, old guy.
okay, I'm
I mean, that
voting
certainly
for-
seems more likely.
As a cardinal in the church, I'm voting for you.
I don't want the job.
And I'm not a
Hey,
cardinal.
we're more likely to have them elect the dumbass out of L.A. as the next pope.
Mahoney.
Yeah, we're more likely to have them elect
Your
Mahoney
favorite
than they are to
guy.
elect a black guy.
I mean, you love that guy. You love that guy so much.
Yes, I do.
You know what? I've hated that man just before I ever read your blog.
Everybody
he's
hated him.
Such an evil person.
But he represents the mainstream Catholic. That's what Catholicism is all about. I hate to say it, but that's exactly it. That's what they're going to
Can I
elect.
ask a question here?
Yeah.
I mean, you and I know each other, but we never discussed certain things. Were you Catholic?
Hell no.
You were a fundamentalist?
Evangelical. Missouri Synod.
Evangelical.
Missouri Synod Lutheran.
Say again?
Missouri Synod Lutheran.
Oh, shit. Those are not evangelical people.
Yes, they are.
No, they're not. My sister was Synod Lutheran, and those people, when
Not crazy Baptists, but they certainly are. They do qualify as evangelicals.
Okay.
They are
Okay.
creationists and all that kind of nonsense.
Okay. So, Hausdorff, what were you? Were you anything?
I grew up evangelical as well. I mean, we were 6-day creationists and, dinosaurs walked around with people. They just never brought it up in the Bible because why would you? It's just commonplace and, all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yep. But we grew up.
Yep.
At last, the religious Easter egg major supermarkets to stock a product with Jesus on the packaging for the first time. Now, this is from the Mail online. Now, I know a lot of our listeners don't consider the Mail anything other than like, what are the
That's more of a tabloid.
tabloids that we consider? But it's an interesting article. Christian groups have won a victory in their campaign to shop to sell religious Easter eggs. What do you think about that?
Well, I just think it's funny that if they've chosen a symbol of fertility to stamp Jesus on, why not just sell chocolate crosses? You know, pick something else.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, I'd love to buy a chocolate cross.
I would totally buy a chocolate cross.
Yeah.
Hey, man, I what I would like to have is a chocolate cross with, something internal, like some candy.
Like raspberry. It needs to be red.
No. A chocolate Jesus with his arms outstretched with a raspberry filling. You know,
Yes.
bite his head off and it just oozes.
So what are we doing here? I mean, and why?
The religious are trying to use pagan symbols to push their religion. That's what they've always done.
Well, what struck me about this story, I thought it was funny. It said it's the only Easter egg to mention Jesus on the package. There is no way that is true. I can't believe that for a second. Nobody else has tried to capitalize on that before?
I'm sure. It's like, who are they going to license Jesus from?
I know.
You know, what I'd like to see them do is have a tiny pretzel Jesus inside the Easter eggs. I'd pay for that. We need something like that. Actually, we should all do that. Get together, start a company, and put out little pretzel Jesuses and Easter eggs. That would be a wonderful product, and I bet you we'd sell a lot to delusional theists and to atheists who want a good laugh.
Sure.
Okay, I will do that.
Okay, well, you do that, okay?
I will participate in that with you.
Okay, yeah, we'll start that company up right now. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next story. Richard Land, who was once called America's most influential evangelical, has come out and admitted that things may be changing among the most fundamentalist Christians in America. In a recent interview, Land says that anti-gay Christian leaders are now being ostracized and treated like outcasts for their views. He, of course, doesn't like this. He's crying alligator tears over how mistreated evangelical Christians are. But isn't this the first step in doing away with the anti-gay moral crusaders? Isn't this a positive sign for the future of equality for all?
Sounds great to me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see how it's a bad thing. Anybody who's going to be attacking homosexuality or women's equality or anything like that, they ought to be ostracized. That's a good thing.
Yep, that's what ostracizing is for.
Yeah. And isn't it funny how these people cry and whine whenever anybody criticizes them, but as soon as they criticize anybody else, they start going, well, it's our right to criticize anybody we want, but don't you dare say anything bad about us.
Well, what I thought was great in the article, he said that he doesn't treat LGBT people any differently, but then farther on down, you could see that he supports Boy Scouts' homosexual ban. So clearly he does treat them differently. And, of course, everything about him shows that he obviously treats them differently. He's either delusional or he's just lying.
Well, he may not openly treat them differently, but his theology sure treats them differently. His theology says that they're a bunch of, sinning scum who deserve to burn forever in hell. What do you mean you don't treat them differently?
Well, that's not me treating him differently. It's God. It's like, yeah, whatever, dude.
Yeah, your imaginary friend in the sky. We're not too impressed with that. Sorry.
Yep.
All right, well, let's go ahead and move on to the main event.
This is the main event.
Over the last couple of weeks, we've been touching on various absurd portions of the Bible, but unlike most Christians, our guest today has been reading through the entire Bible. He's just finished the New Testament and has turned his attention to the Old, and we thought it would be a perfect opportunity to take on the mother of all absurdities, the creation myth. In fact, we're going to spend the rest of the show on just this topic. Since it's much fresher in your mind, why don't you give us your impressions of the creation story, Hausdorff?
Well, my first thought when reading it, and it actually really, really pissed me off when I finished Genesis 1, is just how little is there. And my main thought was, this is the reason that people can't accept evolution. There's just nothing there. It's so obviously a myth of an ancient peoples. It's ridiculous. And yeah, I mean, it's really short. It's like a page or two long. It's really ridiculous. The main thing. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was agreeing with you. It really is. There's nothing really there that you can create a worldview out of. There's no real reason from that you can just reject science because you want to believe that this silly little story is true.
Yeah, it's totally insane. And the thing that I found most surprising is a particular thing that's an order of things. So on the first day, God creates light. And on the fourth day, God creates the sun, which seems completely ridiculous until you think about it. So there's these people, they don't know anything about cosmology or space or anything like this, and they don't realize that the sun is the source of light. I mean, think about it. It gets light before the sun comes up, and it stays light after the sun goes down. And if you look in, the sun's basically one point in the sky, and why would that be the source of light everywhere else? If you look at it from that filter, it's obvious that they're just ancient people who didn't really understand the world, which is fine. But it's obviously not an omniscient God who knows everything. It's so ridiculous.
Oh, it is. If you compare the Genesis account to, say, the Babylonian stories in the Enuma Elish, you find out that they're basically the same damn story. They're point by point by point by point. This is the order that it was done in both accounts. It's pretty obvious that the Enuma Elish is one of the major sources that the people who wrote at least the first biblical creation account came from.
Sure.
And the funny thing is that there are two completely separate biblical creation accounts. The first one in, Genesis 1 to Genesis 2:6, and the second one, 2:7 and on. And that the second one is actually the more primitive account. And the two accounts completely disagree, but theists refuse to acknowledge that they're both different. I mean, they're not even close to being the same order.
Well, so there's a thing about that, actually. If you read it, the second account gives enough wiggle words that you can make them sort of sync up for the most part, and it's not as bad as it seems initially. Not that that is really that big of an explanation, but there's sort of... The way the second is written, it doesn't necessarily have to be in the order that it's presented. It's kind of a crap explanation, but it's a much less strong argument than I was expecting, because I've heard that argument from a lot of atheists.
Well, like in the first one, we do the, man is created first, and then sometime down the road, you've got woman being created out of his rib. In the second one, it has them both being created at the same time, not one from the other, but both of them just created out of the dirt. They can't really come up with an explanation for why those are both the same story.
Well, in the one where they were created at the same time, it's just kind of an afterthought. It's like, oh yeah, and then God created men and women, whatever. But in the other one, it kind of digs into the details, and he kind of goes into it more. So, like, from that perspective, it kind of makes sense. I mean, it's kind of one of these things that sort of my philosophy with reading through the Bible is that there's so many things that are like 100% wrong. If you give them every possible chance to, give them every benefit of the doubt, they still come up quite short. And this is one of those things where if you really want to push it, you can give them the benefit of the doubt on that.
Well, like I was saying before about the Babylonian creation stories, this is another case where what ended up in the Bible clearly came from the Babylonian stories. If you go back to the Enuma Elish, you end up finding that the Sumerian word ti, which means both rib and to make alive, is applied to Eve. And their goddess Ninti means the lady of the rib. And in the story, she made the Eve character to heal the Adam character's sick rib. That's really where all this came from.
Oh, that's really interesting. That makes sense, too, because when I was reading it, I was like, why the rib? Why would they choose the rib? They made Adam out of dirt. Like, it makes no sense. But that actually, if you have that background, that does make sense.
Yeah, and we do know that story came first. They date back, I think, 12,000 years, which is far longer than the ancient Hebrews have even been around. They haven't been around as a distinct sect for more than, I think, 6,000 years, something around that range. But of course, the Christians think that they were around forever, and I guess when you're delusional, hey.
Yeah, they were around for all 10,000 years.
Yeah, well, no, 6,000 years, 4004 BC at 9 a.m. That's when it all started. No, it was 9 a.m. I'm trying to think because they even had a time zone. Damn, I can't remember what Bishop Usher said. But he had it down to, no, it was like 9:04 a.m. in the morning in this particular time zone. Creation was just poof there. And I'm going, how the hell did you come up with that?
Is he serious about that?
Yes, he's serious. They went back and they started calculating how far back everything was based on genealogies, and he came up with 4004 BC. And then I don't know where the 9 a.m. came from, but they've got it down to like 9:04 a.m. at a certain time zone where everything just magically happened. And
of course, I mean, you can use genealogies to calculate to the minute. Why not?
Yeah, I'm going, okay, maybe I can get you back to 4,000 years, even though the genealogies are not complete. They have to kind of do some wiggling in there. But a time? Give me a break.
That's awesome.
No, it's ridiculous. But it's religion. What do you expect?
Yep.
All right, so why don't we go ahead and take a look through some of the things, some of the individual parts of creation.
Okay.
How about if we look at the chaos or the water, where God created everything and there was the water?
Yes.
And I hate to keep going back to the Babylonians, but this all goes back to them as well. If you do read about the darkness upon the face of the deep, in the Babylonian myth, in the beginning there was Apsu, who was the sweet ocean water, and Tiamat, who was the salty water, and the gods separated the two exactly like they did in the Bible. Of course, they don't use those two gods, but they actually use the word that they use in the Bible, which is the Hebrew word Tehom, is actually derived from the word Tiamat. Come on,
nice.
You can't make it too much. You can't make it too much more obvious where you got your ideas than that.
Yeah, I mean it's clear. Well, it's funny because I don't know these background stories that you have, but once you say them, it's like, oh, that was something that was peculiar, and now it makes sense.
Well, that's the problem with a lot of people who just read the Bible, is they just read it without any understanding of where it came from or what it means. By itself, if you just read the Bible, you can sit down and say, well, I can understand how this might be true or that might be true, or, if God came down from on high and handed us these stories that, humans might have gotten this, that, or the other thing wrong, or we just didn't understand it. But if you really look through anthropology and archaeology and find out where these stories come from, it's real obvious that these are not original stories to the Hebrews.
Right.
Back in the old days, borrowing, quote unquote, borrowing from other cultures was commonplace. We made the case a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about the flood story that there is a huge passage out of Exodus that comes directly from the Hindu myths. Word for bloody word. They just
I remember that.
Changed the names. That's all they did. Otherwise, it's the same damn story. But the Christians won't recognize that it's the same story even when you put it in front of them because they're deluded.
Yep. I guess they would think that you're tricking them or something.
Yeah. I don't understand how you can be tricking them. They're not interested in reality. That's kind of the problem. They're out there trying to feel good about the world around them, and whether or not it's true really doesn't seem to matter that much.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I've never understood about religion, and I used to be in that position, so I don't understand how I ever did it. But how can people just believe a thing? And you went through the whole New Testament already, and you should be used to people doing the same things there. But how can they look at a story, believe that story, and when it's proven without a shadow of a doubt that that story is false, they're going to keep believing that story anyway?
Yeah, that boggles my mind because, even not even being proven that it's wrong, but just proven that it's contradictory. It's like, look at these two verses. They say the opposite thing. And then, I'll bring that up to people, and they'll be just like, well, no, it's a different Greek word, and or it's a different word in the original text, and I can be like, no, I can look that up. It's not. Or there's always some excuse that doesn't even necessarily make sense.
Well, it's not like I have any of the original text anyway.
Well, of course.
And the problem is, it's been so long since I've been in those shoes where I've believed things just because I wanted to believe things or just because I've always wanted them to be true. I don't even remember how I justified it to myself.
Yeah, me too. And also, when I was in those shoes, well, there's two things. Number one, there was no internet. So, I had to figure this stuff out for myself or, talk to my pastor. Or, and I was also a child.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine an adult in this day and age not figuring this stuff out at some point.
Yeah, I mean, when I left religion or when I was actually researching some of this stuff, I spent hours after hours in university libraries, going through microfiche, looking up articles, making copies. I've got notebooks full of stuff that I printed back in the day. And I did away with all of the religious crap because I found the evidence. Today, I can't understand how anybody can make an assertion like this when the evidence is right there online. They can prove themselves wrong in a moment, and they still believe. I don't get this crap.
Yeah. Now, living in the future is awesome.
Yeah, I can't wait till we live far enough in the future where we don't have to worry about religion anymore. Well,
yeah, that'll be nice.
So what's next for your blog? Where are you headed to next?
Oh, just plowing through Genesis.
Where are you up to right now?
I am on I did Genesis 4 this morning, so that'll go live tomorrow.
Beautiful.
So Cain and Abel, that was fun. So it's funny, all of these stories are so much shorter. So when I was a kid, we watched cartoons in Sunday school of these, interactions, and they were so much longer and so much more involved. The story of Cain and Abel, Abel brings this pristine, lamb, and Cain brings, crap, just some clippings from his thing, and that's why God rejected it. But that's not what the Bible says. It just says he brought fruit, which is what he did. He was a farmer, and God rejected it, and it's not really explained why. And that was true of the Adam and Eve story as well. There's all these extra details I remember as a kid that is not in the Bible because the stories are just so short.
The problem is they've had to keep embellishing these stories over the years because you really can't get a pastor standing up in front of a congregation for 45 minutes giving a sermon on a page and a half worth of text. And these things have been talked about so much over the years that unofficially all these details have just kind of ingrained themselves into people's psyche.
Yep, and I think they need to add details because the stories themselves don't really make sense, It's like, well, why would God do that? And it's like, well, maybe it's because Eve did this, and then it just adds to it to make the story more coherent.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. If they were going to go back and actually redo the Bible, have a Council of Trent to Electric Boogaloo, and come up with stories that made sense, which, hey, would actually make the Bible more worthwhile, they'd have to explain talking snakes and sinful apples and all this other stuff. But these are stories that just don't make any sense on their own. I mean, why in the world would God put, a tree of the knowledge of good and evil sitting right next to Adam and Eve who don't know anything about good and evil and then say, oh, don't eat from that?
Well, he's got to test them.
But how can you test them if they don't have any knowledge that what they're doing is wrong?
Obedience. That's why.
So they're mindless, obedient dogs who have to do what you say and roll over and play dead. Okay, if that's really the way you guys want to look at it, knock yourselves out. But that's nothing that I would ever accept as a rational human being. I'm glad that
absolutely not. But that's the only answer I could find. Oh, he was testing their obedience, and it's like, but they're effectively children.
But they're not even children. They're effectively pets.
Right. Yes. No, that's correct.
Children at least have some idea of good and wrong. Children, you tell them not to do something, they're probably not going to do it. Adam and Eve, they couldn't even rise to that level. They were just, they were tree slugs or something. And, there's no expectation that they would ever do what God says, because God has specifically not given them the ability to understand that what he says goes.
Right.
And like you said before, this is the kind of crap that makes people reject evolution. Are you guys out of your bloody minds?
Yep.
But then again, I don't think they understand what evolution is. I think that's one of the
No.
bigger problems, is that they just don't understand any of it. They don't get it. It's a story that their pastor says this is wrong, and from that they don't move any farther. They don't even understand what it is. They reject it in school and go off on their merry romp down Fantasyland.
Yep. They don't know. They don't want to know.
Yeah, I still don't understand how people can take the creation story seriously. But then again, we've already done a lot of individual stories throughout the Old Testament. We did the resurrection story last week. I don't get it. I mean, I just sit there and look at them and go, what the hell? What are you guys smoking, and why aren't you sharing?
I've always wondered what it's like to hear those stories for the first time as an adult, because now that I look back on them, I can't believe we tell our children this stuff, or not we, but you know what I mean. Because the stories are insane. I mean, from the creation story, the resurrection story, Noah's Ark, all of these things are like, they're horribly immoral. They don't make sense. Why don't the adults look at these stories and kind of go, wait a minute?
Well, because
but they never do.
They're deluded. They've grown up thinking this is what they're supposed to believe, and this is all unquestionably true, and they're not allowed to doubt any of it. They just have to keep passing it on to the next generation. I mean, let's face it, Revelations. Who is going to read Revelations and think, wow, this is actually true?
I know.
No, this is a drug trip gone wrong. This is nothing that you should accept. And then they will take another story if they go and look at the Vedas or the Quran or, any of the many, many other magical books that people have come up with, and read the same stories that make the same amount of sense and go, well, these stories are obviously false, but the stories that I believe are obviously true. What? Have you guys read this stuff? I don't know. I really honestly don't understand these people.
No, it's very puzzling.
I do appreciate having you on this week. Everybody should take a run over to your blog and take a listen to your podcast. Your podcast is actually very interesting. I've been listening to a couple here and there, and
good.
I hope you make it through the entire Bible doing that.
I think I will. I think I have no problem with long-term goals. I think it's going to take me somewhere between 5 and 7 years, but I'll make it through the Old Testament.
Well, you said you've started, a year ago, and you got through the whole New Testament in a year?
Mm-hmm.
The Old Testament isn't that long.
Well, just based on my Kindle, when I started at the New Testament, it was at about 75% through.
So you probably... It means
so
it'll probably be about 4 years to get the whole thing done if you were 75% in the New Testament.
Yeah, I think it's quite likely that I might have to back off to 3 times a week from 5 pretty soon. Real life might be getting in the way.
Well, yeah. Plus, after a while, you're going to start to go a little dingy.
Yeah.
It actually isn't too bad once you get on, because second half of the Old Testament is just a lot of historical stuff. You actually get a lot of things that are actually true in that part. It's about the only part in the whole Bible that's worth reading. But you actually get real history when you get into the prophets and things. So at least that's a little bit more entertaining than
sounds like fun.
Magical friends in the sky, hit you with lightning and make you explode. Sure. And talking donkeys and all that other nonsense. All right. Well, I do appreciate you being on once again. And
yeah, thank you very much for having me. I had a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And, of course, you're always welcome to come back anytime.
Yeah, great. Definitely have to do it.
Yep. All right, well, we'll go ahead and close up for the week. Thank you once again for everybody listening. I appreciate it. Remember, we have links on our webpage to our iTunes, to our YouTube, to our email. Please comment. Please like us. Please tell a friend and let us know if there's anything that you think we can do better. We're always listening to your comments. Thank you very much. You've been listening to the Bitchspot Report with your hosts, Cephas and Out West. You can follow us on Twitter by following Bitchspot1 or JEH704. Visit our website at report.jdragononline.